Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Disney Resorts Podcast. My name's Kenny Hayes, and I'm joined alongside, as always, by the one, the only, Walt Ramirez.
Hey, Ken, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good, Walt. I'm doing very well. So, folks, in this week's episode, we are going to be discussing Disney recently came out, and finally, lo and behold, DVC fans, Boulder Ridge is getting its refurb. And we'll get into that in just a short minute. Then we are going to talk about some Walt Disney World Resort news some pretty interesting stories that have come out, and you're not going to want to miss that. And then before we wrap up this week's episode, we're going to be celebrating Epcot recently had its 40th birthday on October 1st, and we're going to give you our top 5 experiences that have left a lasting impression on both Walter and I. So sounds like a great show. We want you to stick around, check us out. So, Walt, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, we want to start out with some sad news in a way. Hurricane Ian tore through Central Florida recently, and our hearts and prayers go out to all of those folks that were impacted and are still going through quite a bit down in Central Florida. And we encourage everyone who's listening or watching us, if whatever you can do to donate to the FloridaDisasterFund.org. Ken will post that in the show notes after the show. And again, that's the FloridaDisasterFund.org. And whatever you could do to help out, I'm sure would be greatly appreciated by everyone. And again, that Fort Myers area was just completely devastated. And from what we understand, the Orlando area was impacted with power outages and flooding. And fortunately, Disney World did not have much of a devastating impact. There's some minor damage from what we've seen so far online. Any thoughts on that, Ken?
Yeah, again, just to reiterate what Walt said. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. Again, just to reiterate what Walt said, our hearts, our thoughts, our hearts and prayers go out to everyone who has been impacted, especially in Florida and up along the East Coast. Our thoughts and prayers go with you. And again, like Walter said, that link will be in the show notes below. So go check that out. And no matter if it's $1, whatever you could donate, these people down there really need it. And just to get real quick, not to get personal, but I had several family members down in that area. I have an uncle who is in the Cape Coral area. He is fine, minimal damage. Luckily, where he was at to his house, as of recording, he was still without power. And actually, my older stepbrother is traveled several days prior to the hurricane, rode out the hurricane in a hotel because he was having a house built about 30 minutes south of Walt Disney World. So he was spending 2 weeks down there because he has to go through the walkthrough and then the closing. But I can report that his house and all of that is in good shape, at least for them. They were very lucky. But again, we're thinking about you, and anyone who can help out, please do so.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
we're going to move on with some news stories that we want to cover on today's episode. So Boulder Ridge was announced that they're going to be having their refurb on their rooms. Ken, I think you have some video footage of that.
Yep. If Disney recently put out some concept art of the new look of the Boulder Ridge Villas. Now Walter and I have never stayed there, but I have seen plenty of YouTube videos of Boulder Ridge, and it was desperately, if it looked like that on YouTube, it definitely needed it. So that's why I've always stayed away from it. I've always wanted to try Copper Creek or Boulder Ridge, but
what? Let me ask you this: why do you think it was so beat up? I mean, this is the DVC resort that's fairly new.
Well, I got to be honest. Well, not to jump off the resort, but even when it came down to Saratoga, pre the refurb, that's one of the reasons, not the full, but one of the reasons why I was a little hesitant with Saratoga was the conditions of the room inside. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were clean. However, you when you entered, you could look around, and from the furniture to the carpet to everything, you could tell, as I just spoke a couple episodes ago about Boardwalk, that you're at that point, or you've exceeded that point of, hey, it's no longer a spruce up. We're at the point where we need a full refurbishment. And Boulder Ridge has been delayed because of the pandemic, which pushed back Saratoga, which pushed back Boulder Ridge.
But Boulder Ridge, like I said, is a fairly new resort. So I'm just surprised because that's one of those resorts that isn't really people's first choice. So it's not like, the All-Stars or Pop Century where you're going to see a ton of traffic that would beat up the rooms. So I'm just really surprised. Or do you think that maybe they just decided, you know what, it just needs it because we're trying to just spruce things up because maybe there's not as many people staying there as they might think we're going to?
I could be completely wrong, but maybe it's because when several years ago when they redid the opposite side of Wilderness Lodge, which is Copper Creek, and made that DVC, that they were like, okay, we spent all this money in refurbing the other portion of the resort, and they're trying to sell Copper Creek, that it would have kind of been hard to, with the whole resort kind of being under refurbishment. I'm not really sure. Well, I don't really have a good answer for you.
Right.
But you are right, though, because
just surprised.
Yeah, no one talks about Boulder Ridge. Think about it. We read a lot of stuff. I'm on a lot of blogs. I watch a lot of YouTube. I've even been, and a lot of people probably watch them over on the Diz. You have the Diz boards. Nobody talks about Boulder Ridge. It's like the forgotten DVC resort. And I think, and I'm going to play this up for it now. So I jumped around a little bit, so I apologize. But we have an overview of this, what the new look is going to be at Boulder Ridge. So we're going to bring that up shortly on the screen. Walt, you saw it pre-show. You never stayed there. I've never stayed there. But what's your thoughts, your personal thoughts of what the concept art looks like?
I like the couch. Looks really comfortable. The Murphy bed looks. I'm not a big fan of the Murphy bed in the living room, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah, not a big fan there. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not crazy about that wallpaper in that picture.
I second that.
And is that carpeting that I see underneath the bed? You know how I feel about carpeting in the bed?
It does look like carpeting.
Yeah, it looks like that like the cheap carpeting too, the kind that will last for 10 years. So it looks nice. I'm not a big Southwest decor fan. As you pointed out, that picture there that eliminated the shutters that they used to have in between the bedrooms, I guess, in that area. That couch does not look really appealing to me right there in that picture. So I don't know. I mean, it doesn't knock my socks off. And again, that's part of the problem, like you mentioned, probably because Boulder Ridge really isn't at the top of everyone's, list of places to stay. I mean, even that bunk, I guess you would call that, in the kitchen there, the bench.
Yes.
Yeah, that bench there, that thing looks like, I don't know, something out of the Jetsons or something.
It does look smaller because it has pretty much the same layout. Most of these DVC resorts have the same layout, but it does look smaller, at least in the concept art, than that. Not that like Saratoga or one of them have a big dining room / kitchen table, but it does look smaller.
Yeah, the saving grace for me in that room is the sectional, because Disney doesn't have many. I don't think Disney has any resort that has a sectional that I can think of.
But Walt, me personally, it doesn't bother me about the Murphy bed in the living room. But where I will 100% agree with you, I personally think that wallpaper is awful.
Yeah,
I don't like it, and I know we're probably going to get some hate mail for this. But as you see in this picture right here with the 1960s throwback couch, with the Murphy bed. That is actual concept art. That's art from a studio. So if you're going to stay at a studio on the Boulder Ridge side, that's where your bed's going to be. Or, well, actually, I'm sorry. That's where your second bed would be.
Yeah.
Now, so your thoughts, even after a refurb, they are talking right now in the article that I read that the demos are underway now. They expect construction sometime later in 2022, and which we already in later 22. So I'm thinking more towards the holidays. And they're talking about a wrap up. I don't know if this article is correct. By sometime in mid to late spring of 2023, it being completed. So with that being said, it looks like by next summer you could get a new room if you're staying at Boulder Ridge, if this information we have in front of us is correct. So let me ask you, Walt. You've seen the concept art. We both have our feelings about it. Would you ever book a room here in the future?
I would give it a shot if it's reasonably priced. If it's going to be on par with some of the higher end resorts, the DVC resorts, like for example, Yacht Club or Beach Club, then I would say no. That would be my first. Those two would be my first choice over this resort if the prices are the same or comparable. If you're going to give me a discount to stay there, absolutely, I'd give it a shot and stay there. But you know, I mean, it looks nice, but again, like I said, is it at the top of my list? No. Is it in my top 3? No. So, you know, again, it comes down to availability. Like if that's the only thing available that I can get to go on a Disney trip, I definitely would stay there. I wouldn't be like, oh no, I'm not gonna stay at Boulder Ridge. I'm not gonna go to Disney. Of course, I'd go, but if I was searching it out, I wouldn't. It's not my cup of tea. I mean, the whole decor and the theming at Boulder Ridge is not me. But I'm sure it's super nice, and I'd like to give it a try and at least maybe do a review eventually. But yeah, no, hopefully the concept art, hopefully they improve on that concept art, because some of that is just like, it's not super appealing.
I gotta say, I would try it, but I am with you. It is definitely not even at least in my top 3.
Yeah.
I do like visiting the resort. I think it is a beautiful resort. I love the lobby, and I'm going to say it. I hope I get down there for Christmas. Fingers crossed. But I have been there for Christmas in that lobby, and I will tell you, any Disney fan who's listening out there, if you're going to be down for the holiday season, definitely make an effort to head over to Wilderness Lodge and see that lobby and that enormous Christmas tree. It is absolutely gorgeous. And if you're a Christmas fan like me, you will absolutely appreciate the job that Disney does there. It's just an incredible view. I think I actually posted a picture with the sunburst coming through on our Instagram page, and I caught that. Yeah. And what a great shot. I'm not complimenting myself. That was pure luck. It was pure luck. Nice, yeah. But I would like to try it. But I get like that DVC snobby where I look at my points and I'm like, well, do I want to put my points on there? And I don't really like the decor in the room. And then I'm like, oh, well, now I got to wait a couple months to go back again. That's where I always hesitate with switching resorts.
Right.
But
how does that compare point wise to some of the other DVC resorts?
If I remember right, I don't remember off the top of my head, but Boulder Ridge, I believe, is fairly, it's you're not going to go you're not going to go nuts with rooms.
It's comparable.
It's comparable, yeah. Okay. But now I'm going to have to go check that though, because like I said, I've never looked at Boulder Ridge, never. Walter, I've never pulled it up one time and said, "Let me see if there's a room available there."
Yeah, that says a lot.
Yeah, it's forgotten. It's forgotten. Like we talk about Grandpa Disney, there's forgotten Disney. Yeah. Boulder Ridge is forgotten Disney.
Well, but again, it doesn't appeal to us because of the part of the country, I guess, that we're from. So,
yes,
like if you're from that part of the country, you're probably going to want to stay there because it kind of makes you feel more like home. So, Hey, Walt, can I ask you one question before we move on? Sure.
And I thought about this because I love to go eat at Geyser Point. Do you think it's a drawback that it's not on the monorail loop? and it's only accessible by boat or bus?
I think that has a factor. Absolutely. I think anything that's not on the monorail loop usually, look, let's put it this way. Would it prevent people from going there? Probably not. But from a convenience standpoint, yeah, I think there's a slight impact that it doesn't, that it's not on the monorail loop. Absolutely.
I agree.
So one of the other things that came out in the news was the announcement of an after-hours event that is starting, which was formerly known as Extra Magic Hours, which used to be free, by the way, but is now comes with a price tag. Or it's had a price tag in the past, but they took it off for a little while. Now they're bringing it back, starting on January 4th of 2023. The first event will be at Hollywood Studios, and then subsequently they'll have another one the following week at Magic Kingdom, and then monthly through, I believe, April.
Yes,
they will have them with a price tag of $129 to $159 per person per event. Now, you're going to have to help me out on this because I do not know if you do need a valid park ticket for the day to get in. I don't know. Because if
I don't
you
know.
don't, then that price tag is not that bad. Because in essence, what you're doing is you're paying slightly more for a day ticket to get 3 hours of basically unimpeded or slightly unimpeded time at your rides. You'll get the major rides in that 3 hours, whereas during the day, battling the crowds, it would probably take you like 6 or 7 hours to get everything done that you want to get done. Problem is, in that 3 hours, you're going to basically be hustling to all the rides, because if you're thinking about having something to eat or snack or kind of take in the atmosphere, ambiance, you're not going to get a lot of things in. So maybe I would have to do some more research. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to take a look and see if, in fact, you do need a park ticket to get in for that event. If you do, then it's not worth it, because if you're paying the park ticket for the day and the event ticket at the end of the night, you're talking about a pretty hefty price tag for the entire day. So I don't know. What do you think about this thing?
Yeah, our apologies out there, people, but it was a last minute kind of when we were in pre-show. We're like, let's talk about after hours, so that's why we're not a little more up on it. But yeah, we did see it. I can only say I don't personally think you do, and I could be wrong. Now, like I said on my most recent trip, my wife did not get a park pass at all. However, we had tickets to Moonlight Magic over at Animal Kingdom, and you were allowed to enter the park early, so you could do early check-in. Well, she was allowed in. So I would assume it would be the same way, because after hours is basically just like Moonlight Magic. It's a ticketed event. Right. So it would be linked to and you have to get it comes, they put the band on you as well. So I'm going to say no, but if I'm wrong, let us know in the comments below.
Now, we could always update this on a later
yes.
show.
Now, we could always talk about it again, leading up closer to it. Now think about this, Walt, because I did think about it. So to get Extra Magic normal, you have to stay at a deluxe resort, which costs you $4, $5, $6 plus $100 a night, $700 a night. So, and we talk about how it stinks, because if you're a fan of the moderates or you're a fan of the value, and like I said, I have family members that go all the time who could well afford staying at Grand Floridian, Beach Club, you name it, and go to Pop Century, and how they get locked out of those Extra Magic hours because they're not staying at a deluxe resort. So if I don't mind the after hours being brought back, this is the first time since the pandemic. Because think about it, if you're staying over at Pop Century, you go down for a long weekend, and if you don't have to buy the park ticket, so what is it? Was it $129, Walt, to $149?
129 to 159. So
Okay,
I don't know why the 159 comes into play. I don't know if it's because it might depend on the park.
It probably depends on the park.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about that. But
I don't think that's bad. Like you said, we come from the days where most of it was free, and we know that's gone.
yeah,
So it is what it is. It's the past. However, I don't think that's bad because, yeah, you're going to run, but if you're down there and you want to experience the rides, you don't have to stay at a deluxe resort to get those, later hours. I personally don't think it's a bad deal, but I also don't have a family of 4 or 5 that I have to pay for either.
right.
So,
Yeah.
what do you think, Walt? Would you do it if you were down at one of those days? Would you do it? Would you pay the price?
Like I said, it depends on the day ticket. That's what hinges my decision on, because if it's like you said, if I don't need it, then somebody like me that can navigate the park and hit the rides that I want to, the 3 extra hours are fabulous. The last time we did this, and we've talked about this on a previous show, it was at Hollywood Studios, and I got everything done that I wanted to do. And if I hadn't done certain rides twice, I would have been able to basically experience all the major rides at Hollywood Studios, including, Ride of the Resistance. So,
I remember you saying that.
Yeah. So from that standpoint, it's worth it. But like I said, if I'm in the park all day, if I paid, $101 to $105, whatever it is now, to get in, and I then have to pay an additional $130 to stay for another 3 hours, I don't know. That would kind of, I would say, probably not worth it for me.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But I mean, at least they're bringing something back, which is good, instead of eliminating things.
Yes.
And speaking of transitioning into the next story, bringing back the retro magic bands are coming back. I just real quick, not to harp on that too long, but I did see some really, really cool designs. Magic Kingdom in particular, the different lands, and the 40th anniversary Epcot logo was also on one of the ones I saw. So it kind of piqued my interest. It's something that I might have to hit the merch shop next time I'm down there to take a look at those.
Now, I know, Walt, because you are not a big merch guy. And correct me if I'm wrong. So if you're talking about going to get it, it's good.
As you can tell, looking over my shoulder, I'm not a merch guy at all. No, but I'm not a huge shopper when it comes to, things like that are like anniversary related.
Yeah.
I mean, like I have the 50th anniversary popcorn tin, but that was just something that it appealed to me. But I'm not like somebody that's going to run out and get,
the impulse.
Epcot T-shirts and you name it. I mean, it's got to be something that really impacts me or hits me in a certain way that I would be interested in getting it. But those magic bands do look interesting. And I've always liked the magic band. I'm not a big fan of the new magic band. I haven't personally purchased one yet, but I've seen pictures of it, and it looks really kind of bulky. So
I'll tell you what, I'm going to say, of course, it's DVC, but I've seen a couple posts over the last couple of days of the new Magic Band Plus Disney Vacation Club one. And I got to say, I like it. And I've thought about purchasing it.
Yeah. Well, I saw the one that's the retro one, and I thought that's really cool, even though I'm not a DVC member anymore, but I was even thinking about getting one.
Because I am a collector, and I'm thinking probably by sometime later this year or next year, I want to redo what I call the studio. And I am a big collector of magic bands. So,
Okay. That's cool.
They collect dust, but I have them. So I got to
display them.
Yes.
So speaking of costs, it seems that it's so expensive to get into Disney World these days that people are actually sneaking their children in baby carriages.
I saw that. I wish I had the picture of it to post.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw a story where a lady tried to sneak her little girl into Magic Kingdom in a baby carriage.
Yes.
And I just, I don't know. I mean, I looked at that and I said, really? I mean, it's just, are we getting to this point now? We have to do this.
I saw that. Did you see the video footage of that, Walt?
Yeah, very brief video footage. I don't know if there's a longer version. I saw like one that's like maybe like 30 seconds long.
Yeah, the real quick I saw when they came through, and where you come through. Oh, why am I drawing a blank? Once you come through underneath in the Magic Kingdom on your right hand side, yes, and you have the theater where you have the meet and greets.
Mm-hmm.
So they stopped right in front of there, and then they were taking the blanket off, and the child was coming out. And so somebody else was filming them.
Yeah, well, I saw the video. Well, I saw it even before that. Somebody was filming them as they were going through the turnstile, and when they were doing their magic band, and somebody was filming them at that point. And one of the cast members actually kind of did like a double take and looked back at the baby carriage. But evidently, from things I've read online, they were instructed to not say anything. So
yes, because you might have read the same article that I did. And they say, and they were talking to someone, of course, it was, anonymous employee. It happens a lot more than you think. It happens a lot more than you think. And at first I thought about it. And so at first I thought about it and I'm like, you kind of feel, I almost felt bad for a minute. Like, what happens if that family they can't afford it and they're trying to get their kid in the park. And then the other part of me played devil's advocate. And I'm like, I pay full price to go in there. You pay full price to go in there with your family, no matter who comes with us. So the other part of it, I kind of ticked me off a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, and like I said, please, I'm not trying to say it. I want everyone to be able to experience it. And I'm very fortunate that I get to go several times a year. So I'm not knocking someone who necessarily can't afford to get in there, because you and I talk about all the time about how we think Disney is pricing people out and how they're inching and inching and inching closer to people like us. However, then the devil's advocate, like I said, I'm like, well, I paid full price to get in here. I pay annual dues.
Right.
I pay all this money a year, and, I'm not breaking the rules. I follow the rules. So I kind of flip-flopped for a little bit on how I felt.
Yeah. This one kind of looked like they were just trying to scam the system.
Yes, and I'm gonna be honest with you, Walt. In my opinion, and I have no data to back it up, it probably was a scammer.
Yeah,
it probably was.
Well, we're going to try that, because I'm going to put you in a baby carriage next time we go and put a blanket over you. See if we can get in.
Don't look at me. Don't look at me.
Yeah, somehow I don't think it's going to work, but it might be worth filming.
I'm going to tell you, though, it'd be worth filming, and we'll probably go viral.
Yeah, definitely, especially when we get arrested by the sheriff's department there. So we're going to move on to our main show topic, which is the 40th anniversary of Epcot, which was on October 1st. And we're not going to necessarily talk about a lot of the similar topics that other podcasters are touching on right now, which is a lot of the merch and a lot of the different things that are available to do currently. I think our take on this is going to be more of a personal take of how Epcot has impacted us since we've been going to Disney World. So for me, I've been going to Disney since 2000. So I've been there going for 22 years. So I have a top 5 things that have impacted me over that time span that I'd like to share. And I think Ken eventually will probably chime in on some of those and maybe add some of his own.
Will do.
So these aren't in any particular order, but I am kind of going to go in kind of an order for me personally. So my first one is Spaceship Earth. Spaceship Earth is basically the symbol of Epcot. And it was one of the things that, for me, when I first saw it, it was just, one of those things where I was like just shocked at the magnitude and the size of this structure. And it was the first ride that I ever experienced. Now, it wasn't the first park that I was in when I first went to Disney World. That was Magic Kingdom, but this was the first ride that I experienced at Disney World was Spaceship Earth, and I remember it because it was it was a slow moving ride, but it was it was fun because you created a character that at the end of the ride, you had your picture taken and your head was superimposed on this figure, and you chose different things that, you wanted to do in the future. And then the fun part was coming out at the end of the ride and going down into this, this area where you're up on the screen and you could see yourself on this giant screen. And it was just one of those things that was just a fun thing to do. And it was one of those rides that it made you feel good about being in Disney World and in Epcot itself. My number 2 on the list is one of my favorites, which is Illuminations. Now, Illuminations hopefully will come back soon.
Fingers crossed.
But Illuminations was something that left a lasting impression on me. It was something that we experienced post dinner. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, we would schedule a dinner at either Rose and Crown or Le Cellier, but Rose and Crown in particular because of the view of the fireworks and being able to sit on the on right up against the
right up on the water
on the lagoon side. So that was one of those things that was just the cherry on top of the night. I really looked forward to it, and it was just it kind of pulled at your heartstrings. It gave you different emotions about a lot of different things, including what you were experiencing with your family at Disney World, and it connected with me because it was something that when I traveled there with my mother, it was something that she really, really enjoyed and looked forward to. So the few times that she was able to go, I always made it a point to try to do that with her. The third thing on my list is the Food and Wine Festival. So the Food and Wine Festival is an event that, there are a lot of festivals at Epcot, as you know. That's not the only one. It's pretty much, there's a festival every week, I think. But yes. Food and wine is something that is something that it was a festival that we did for the first time, and it left a lasting impression on me. And it was something that we would plan our vacations around food and wine, where we would go and we would schedule our trips around it, and loved the different kiosks and food, and it just was something that we looked forward to, and generally because it lasted well into the fall sometimes. So I don't know. I think they've changed dates again over the years, but it was one of those things that we really enjoyed, and that was another thing too that you can kind of work your vacation around. So number 4 on my list is the Mexico Pavilion. So the Mexico Pavilion is probably, in my opinion, one of the best pavilions in the World Showcase. The shopping in that pavilion, I think, is probably the best in Epcot. It's got a great bar in there, the La Cava Tequila bar. It's got a great ride. And it's just one of those pavilions that you walk in and you really don't want to leave right away. A lot of the pavilions, you walk in, you walk out, you see what you got to see, and you're out of there. But this one, you kind of want to hang out for a while. And it's one of those things that, like, you always try to do on your vacation when you go to Disney World and go to Epcot, you always try to hit that pavilion, usually first. Not always, but usually. The last thing on my top 5 is, and something I've talked about on a previous episode, is the Tapestry of Nations Parade. The Tapestry of Nations Parade is another parade that connects with me because it was one of my mother's favorite parades when she did go to Epcot. So along with her loving of the Illuminations fireworks, she also did enjoy the Tapestry of Nations Parade. And even when she didn't go with us on vacation, I also enjoyed the Tapestry of Nations Parade because it just was, like I said in the previous episodes, it was one of those things that between the music and the shows, the show itself, the parade itself, and the characters, the cast members, and the way they put on the show, it really, really made you emotional in a way. I mean, maybe it's just me, but it just really, it's one of those songs that gets stuck in your head that you just, you hear it over and over again, and it brings you back to a moment in Disney that you experienced. So that's my top 5, my things that have impacted me the most over the last 20 plus years at Epcot. So what are your thoughts, Ken? And how about your list?
So a lot of mine is very close to yours, if not the same as yours. I have not traveled as much as you have to Disney, nor do I think I will ever catch you. But my first trip was in 1985. So Epcot was only a couple years old. Funny story. I do remember, I was a young lad, but I do remember I went with my grandfather and my mother on a trip down to Florida and Orlando. And they really tried to get me on Spaceship Earth. And I was terrified. Because for all you young people out there listening or watching us over on YouTube, back in the early 80s, there was no internet. There was no YouTube. There was no smartphones. So there was nothing to tell you what was going on that ride. The only way to find out was to get on it. And I had a fear of that, knowing that, like, I have no idea what's going on in there. You're not getting me on there. So, yes, the young lad of me back in it was 1985. I did not go on. But I was in Epcot. I do remember Epcot, and this is only a few years after it opened. Magic Kingdom, like you said, Magic Kingdom was the first park I ever went to. But okay. And then I had a long gap. I went back to, and it'll catch up with the story. I know I don't want to think everyone I'm getting off Epcot. And then I did not go back to Disney World again until the late 90s. And then I had a long hiatus again until about 9 years ago when I went down with you guys, and lo and behold, just Disney became my thing. And love talking about it, love planning trips. And as I'm leaving to come home, I'm planning another trip. But it turns out to go full circle from 1985 to when I returned my first trip back to Disney with you. Spaceship Earth was the first ride that I went on. And I remember I was like still nervous because I did not grow up going to theme parks. I was not, and I still am not. I'm still not a huge ride guy. Walter's the ride guy. So you can make fun of me, laugh at me, throw comments at YouTube. I'm totally good with it. Totally comfortable with myself. But I remember going on it, and until the end of me, Spaceship Earth will hold a place in my heart. That is where it all began for me. And I remember getting off that ride and was like, how cool was that? Like, I want to go back on again. And it's not a thrill ride. I like those type of rides. That's just who I am. That's just how I wire. Don't get me wrong. I love my Big Thunder and you know, Slinky. That I will do them. But you're right. Just like you said, Walt, and you said it much better than me. Spaceship Earth holds a near and dear place in my heart when it comes to Disney, especially Epcot. Illuminations is my number 2 also. I got to experience that again with you. And we had no better view, like you said, than we were at the time when it wasn't an upcharge, that we got to have dinner at Rose and Crown outside directly on the lagoon and experience illumination. And we actually got to do it several times. And other people in my household don't necessarily agree with me, but Illuminations was one of my favorite shows. I enjoyed Illuminations. I also did remember when you used to be able to do, I believe it was a fast pass as well, to get the better location?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, when you come from Spaceship Earth and when you go, if you just walk straight into World Showcase, it was straight ahead. That was a roped off area. And when I brought my father and my stepmother and the rest of my family in 2018, we got tickets for that area. And we got to watch Illuminations from there as well. And it's something on, you know, I was with my father and you know, my whole family and got to experience it. So, and, you know, there was something about the wall at Rose and Crown that was so cool to just sit outside, have a nice meal, have a couple drinks, and get to watch that show. And I was very fortunate enough to get to experience it several times from that location. So I agree with you with Illuminations as well. Food and wine. Food and wine was also my first festival at Epcot. And to piggyback off you again, it's people say, oh, you travel around the world, but you do. I get to travel around the world and experience it in the safety of my own country. That's what I always tell people. I get the safety of my own country. I get to explore the world. But all kidding aside, you get to walk around. You get to try all different food, all different drinks from all parts of the world. How cool is that? Yeah. You can't do that at home. I can't do that at home. How cool is that? And Disney's one of the few places, if not the only place, that you can do that. Now I have my things, my hiccups with Food and Wine, because I don't think it's as good as what it was when you and I started going together. But I still really enjoy it. And I think, in my opinion, it's probably still the most popular festival of the 4 is Food and Wine. I think so many people book trips like you have and I have around Food and Wine. And now, like you said, because there's a festival, or now the festivals went from, you know, a month and a half, 2 months, to now it's like 4 months of each festival. I know I extreme a little bit, but it's the truth, though. I mean, they're long now. I got to say also, I've experienced all 4. I love all 4, but there's something about the Flower and Garden Festival. I don't think Epcot looks any better than Doran Flower and Garden.
I agree.
I love when you have when you're coming from Spaceship Earth and you got the berm there with the water, and that's all the flowers laid out and they're fully bloomed. And if you catch the picture right at that right moment, and then you got the monorail coming through, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. And I love looking at all the topiaries. I love Flower and Garden, and I try to make sure that I go to Flower Garden every year. But I'm going to tell you an honorable mention, if I may, because this is your topic. Okay. And I think you might experience it this coming year. I am not an artsy person at all, but the Festival of the Arts, we tried it right before the pandemic for the first time. And I wasn't like, okay, we're going to go. We're down there. You know, art's not my thing. I don't knock it. It's just not my thing. I really liked it. and I've gone several years now, and I really enjoy the Festival of the Arts. They've got some really cool artwork going on there, and then you get to see some of the artists. I got to meet some of the artists, like the pictures you see above me is from Larry Dotson. I got to meet him personally. All these behind me are signed, and I witnessed him sign them. That's really cool. Most people look at me and they go, "Who's Larry Dotson?" I know who Larry Dotson is. But yeah, it's
your wife will be mocking you again after post show.
Yeah, she told you about that because real quick, funny story. When I went in to meet him, and I was like, Larry. But yeah, they do great work. Like I said, Walt, before I wrap up my Epcot, I was shocked when I went to that festival, not being an artsy kind of guy, and left there going, I definitely have to go back to this festival again. I really do. I really do. So, and I'll tell you one last. Yeah. You'll like it, Walt. I really think you will. You might go in and think like, I'm not big into art. It will surprise you, and the food is really good too. Think about it. Even though it's not food and wine, there's plenty of food everywhere. Yeah. At these things now, they've expanded over the years. And to wrap up with my Epcot is Le Cellier. And like Walter and I, and if any of you have listened to us, and if this is your first episode, welcome. We love Le Cellier. But when I go to Epcot and when I go to eat dinner at Le Cellier, it's more than just a good meal. I'm there. I'm with my family. We love eating there. And sometimes you get to look back and think of like, that how cool is it that I get to experience this? How fortunate I am to experience this. And how cool is this? I'm eating dinner in a wine castle, in the cellar of a wine castle. Yeah. Right? I said it? In the cellar. Yes. Say that 5 times fast. But I never got to see the Tapestry of Nations parade, so I can't. You speak very highly of it, and I would like to see it. Bring it back. But yeah, so that's my Epcot as well. But I will say to Walt, I 100% agree with you with Mexico. 100% agree.
Well,
you can't go wrong.
It leads us into the next and final topic before we wrap up today. Mm-hmm. And I saw this. I kind of stole this from a magazine that I was reading about Disney World, and so I'm sorry. I apologize, but it was an interesting topic. So one of the questions that people often are asked about World Showcase is, do you go left or do you go right? So I'll let you go first on this one. Do you go left or do you go right?
Left. Grand Fiesta Tour, margaritas, let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to surprise you.
Really?
Because you probably think I was going to say go left also to Mexico as much as I
thought you would have.
But, I thought about it, and over the last couple of years, I've changed. I'm actually going right for actually a couple of reasons. One of which is the one you just mentioned, which is Le Cellier. The other one is Rose and Crown. I love the bar over at Rose and Crown. I love the atmosphere over there when the place is packed. One day we'll share that story with everyone about an experience that I had over at Rose and Crown during one of their more rambunctious periods. And then the other thing too the other reason to go right is the International Gateway, because of my love for the Crescent Lake area, the Boardwalk, Yacht Club, Beach Club area. So initially, yes, I was going left to go to Mexico, but now that I've kind of evolved, I guess, and gotten older, I'm going more towards the to that side, just so that I can have dinner, have a good drink, and then go back to my room. So
let's say you're telling me I need to grow up, Walt.
So I usually have a tendency to go in that direction now, but again, either way, you can't go wrong. World Showcase is a great place. It's a lot of fun. The food's excellent. The pavilions are all excellent. And Epcot is near and dear to me. Obviously, Magic Kingdom is the cornerstone of Disney World, but Epcot, I think, is a close second. I think Walt would be really proud of what the cast members and have represented and done, in his memory, really, because he had a rendering of what he thought it was going to be, and obviously it didn't come close to what he thought it was going to be, but they adapted it to the theme park genre, and they did a phenomenal job with it. And I think hopefully it'll be around for another 40 years, and hopefully they'll expand it and add different things to it. They've already done that with some of the rides, and they've improved on those. So, hopefully good things going forward for Epcot.
I agree.
So, yep. So I think we're going to wrap up this episode. One real quick thing I wanted to add. I will be traveling later this week to Portugal. I have family there, and a lot of relatives my family lineage is originally from Portugal. So I will be traveling there, and I will try to send Ken some photos if anyone's interested. I know it's not Disney related, but it's still a really interesting part of the world, and a country that I feel is highly underrated for travel. So I'll try to share that as much as possible as I can. And then, we have another show lined up with our part 2 of Saratoga review, and that'll be later this month. So I think we're gonna wrap up tonight. Call it a night, Ken. What do you think?
Yep, a good show as always, Walt. And before we wrap, I just want to wish you a very happy vacation and a safe trip. And I will see you in a couple weeks when you return.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night,
folks.
everybody.
You too. All right, folks. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Disney Resorts podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. For Walt Ramirez, I'm Kenny Hayes. Take care, everybody.